I'm going to talk about a particular elk hunt that I did one day. Took off early of a morning and afoot with my rifle and day pack, fairly lightly supplied day pack with what I needed for the day and so forth. I always carry a saw in my day pack, and I always have about 4 knives. 4 extremely good knives that are just absolutely razor sharp. I also have a sharpening stone in my day pack for sharpening a knife in case I need to. Dull knife isn't much good to you trying to dress out an elk, and dressing out elk, it'll really dull a knife. Well, anyway, I was afoot, walked in several miles, place that I've been many times, and as I was traveling, I positioned myself where I could kind of watch some country, kind of watch some draws. Now I'm in timber. I'm in a timbered hillside, timbered pockets, and one thing another. But I see movements. I see movements of elk, and they're bulls. And as near as I could tell, there were 4 bulls in this bunch. And they had no idea that I was there. And I had to move so that I could get a better view of the elk, because it just wasn't a shot situation where you could see clear enough to make a shot. And I worked on these elk, and I was being very careful to stay with the wind in my favor. Whatever air movement that there was, air movement is still, something that's going to carry your scent to the elk. And after a bit, these elk either detected my movement or smelled me. I don't know whether they saw me, maybe, I don't know. But they basically kind of headed somewhat the other direction, and I just kept working on them and working on them and working on them. And now I worked on these elk for probably about 20 minutes or so, trying to get a situation. And I had got enough glimpses of these elk to know that there was a nice bull in there. And eventually, this bull and the others became somewhat curious. And they, in different positions, they kind of stopped and were looking at their back trail, because I was on their trail. And I was staying pretty well with them. And at this time, I'm about 275 yards or so. I didn't need to range find it. I knew about what it had to be. And this biggest bull, he stopped, quartered me somewhat. And he was trying to figure out what was going on, and I actually think that these elk thought that perhaps there were wolves that were on their trail. I don't know as though they knew it was a person. Now the other 3 elk just then that were there, they pretty well left, but this elk was still watching. And I was carrying the 280 Remington loaded with 160 grain Nosler Partitions. And I had a quick make to rest against a tree, and I shot, and that elk just blew up, went out of sight. I knew my hold was just perfect. And anyway, it took a little bit of doing. It probably took me 15 minutes to get to there. It was uphill from me a bit, and following a game trail. And it was a fair amount of snow. You had to pay attention because some places the footing wasn't very good. Might have been a little icy. And eventually I caught up to the dead elk. He basically ran the other direction. Body cavity obviously filled up with blood. And he piled up and he went down kind of a chute. And the chute was about 20 feet wide. And it was just totally covered with ice. So he'd slid down this chute quite a ways. And there was no other thing that could possibly be done but for me to be able to handle this elk on that damn ice. And it took me quite a while. It took me quite a long time. And at one point, finally, I got the elk cut in half. And I got his legs cut off at his knees and one thing another. And I got both halves just kind of pulled to the side onto the hillside, you know, to where I could be able to handle it, you know, later. But this out of all my elk hunts, this was a real fantastic situation because it was so exciting that I just kept working on these elk until I got my exact opportunity. I wasn't going to flub it. I got my exact opportunity to kill that elk. And, you know, when I got back to the outfit, my son was there because he was hunting too, and he'd went another direction. And no sense in having to be together. We'd double our opportunity by hunting another direction. And anyway, we had to come in and we had to gather up a couple of pack animals and one thing another. And it was only, you know, not that far to get in there. So we took the horses, mules that we needed and worked our way in there. And about 45 minutes before dark, you know, just as we're getting to where this elk is, a very nice high mountain mule deer buck come right across there within 75 yards where I'd killed this nice bull. And we cut those two halves in half again to have quarters, and basically, you know, cape that elk and cut the head off. And this is a 6 point, a pretty even 6 point bull. It's fairly high, fairly good points, not real wide, about medium width. Scores 345. And you know, there's a lot of situations when you're hunting and you just have a simple opportunity and an elk's there and you shoot it. But this is a whole nother thing. You know, I hunted these elk right where they lived. I did everything right. I just kept working on them and working on them. I would have walked twice as far to get the opportunity if I needed to, because I knew that the elk around, you see. But they just all the time they just acted like something was really after them. Something was after them, but I don't think that the elk could see me very darn well at all because of the way everything's set and one thing another. But sometimes curiosity kills the bull. He was really curious. I let him have it. But boy, it was fun.